Welcome back to the Relationships Made Simple for Men podcast with me, Bryce Bauer. Today, I'm going to be talking about attachment styles. The science of adult attachment in relationships has really caught on in the last few years. And this is important to understand because this is a fundamental part of how you relate to others, specifically romantic partners. Now, the research suggests that about 50% of people have a secure attachment style, while 20% of people have an anxious attachment style, and 20 to 25% of people have an avoidant attachment style. The remaining 5% have a disorganized attachment style, but we're not going to really get into that today because that's more of an attachment disorder that probably is coupled with a severe mental health issue. And that's not something that I help people with. I want to get a few things out of the way first, which is that even if you would qualify as securely attached, you are going to lean one way or the other, either anxious or avoidant when there is stress present. So even if you do feel like you are securely attached, the question to be asking yourself is, which way do I lean and which way does my partner lean? And how does that play out in our patterns? One simple way to understand this is to think about islands and waves. This comes from Stan Tatkin. He's a well-known marriage and family therapist. He wrote a book called Wired for Love, which is on my bookcase back there. And I'd suggest reading it if you want to get a more in-depth understanding of the science of attachment. So if we're thinking about people and what they do under stress as an island or a wave, you can imagine someone as a wave wanting to move towards connection. They want closeness, they want intimacy, they want to be around people. Whereas an island stands alone. They might enjoy being around people, but they also want space. They value independence and self-reliance. So in healthy forms, we want to be able to do both. We can be around people, get along with them, connect with them, and we also want to be able to take space and not need people all the time. Too much reliance on people causes codependence, and not enough reliance on others causes isolation. And both of these things make us less connected to ourselves because we need people to provide a mirror into our own worlds if we really want to grow. And we also need to feel strong enough in ourselves to confront being alone because the relationship to ourselves is the one relationship that we will never lose. We can lose other relationships through death and breakup and general disconnection in our everyday lives, but we're never going to lose this. So we have to be strong here. So when you have two people trying to balance themselves out and each other to grow their capacity and learn to be differentiated and connected, this creates a powerful force. And the way that I like to think about this is, what can our relationship handle? If we both know how to support each other and ourselves, we can probably handle a lot. We can handle the little miscommunications that happen day to day, and we can handle the big life events, unplanned emergencies, the tragedies, the unexpected life changes that happen to everybody. That is really the goal of doing this work. And what I find fascinating is that people tend to couple with their opposite attachment style or leaning, even if it's subtle. And it can be easy to look at this as a problem because sometimes the thing that we're wanting is the opposite of what our partner wants. So we might try to give them the thing that we would want, but they want the opposite. And this can be really hard for people to understand because you've only lived in your experience and you've set up your hierarchy of values. For instance, when Jenny and I first started dating 10 years ago, I was hyper independent. I had just spent 2 years traveling around the world alone. I mean, I would see people at hostels and I had a couple of friends visit me for a week or two. I had jobs, so I had coworkers around, but I was really 100% reliant on myself and I thrived in that experience. The freedom to do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. And my strategy, if someone wanted to do something different than me, was simply to say, okay, well, you go do what you want to do, and I'll do what I want to do, and then we'll both be happy. In my head, this made perfect sense. So when I got with Jenny, who really values connection and working through things to find a solution to where we can both do what we want together, I would hit my capacity sometimes. It doesn't seem like we can find a solution that's really going to feel good for both of us. It was often like me wanting to do a trip somewhere. And if she wasn't into it, I would be like, okay, well, you can stay and do whatever you want to do, and then I'll go. And this was really painful to her. And I did not understand. Why can't you be okay with us parting ways just temporarily, because we can always come back and be together later? I didn't want to end the relationship. I just wanted a lot of freedom to do whatever I wanted still. But what I understand now is what was really happening underneath the surface was anxiety. The desire to go out and do a trip was real, but the experience of trying to work something out together brought up a lot of fear in me. The avoidance core fear is being controlled or trapped. And that's what was coming up in me. Whereas Jenny's core fear is being abandoned as someone who is more anxiously attached. Their fear is that the people that they want to spend time with will slowly drift away from them or disappear altogether. And so even though we were talking about something really simple like a few-day trip, what was really going on underneath the surface at a nervous system level was fear and anxiety. And what I know now is that is the thing that actually needs to be focused on first. I see people get stuck here all the time because they're focused on creating a solution, but sometimes there isn't a solution. And by solution, I mean something that will feel good for both of us long term. Yeah, I can just take off on my trip, but I'm going to be holding this tension, this knowing that this didn't feel good for my partner. And Jenny could sweep her needs under the rug and say, oh yeah, go ahead, do whatever you want. She's going to be holding this tension that I don't really get her, or that I don't really value our connection. And some couples will play this pattern out over and over and over. Even though they might make logical decisions about what to do, there's still the underlying current of fear and anxiety. And then it will come out in weird ways. Sometimes couples come in to see us, and on the surface, it looks fine. Like they solve problems easily. They have their way of managing tasks. But underneath, they feel like my partner doesn't really care about me, or they don't understand me. So this is what they're really fighting about. And this won't go away unless we understand it together and deal with it directly. This is why relationships are confusing, because there's so much going on underneath the surface that we don't see. And as a professional working in this industry, I have the luxury of being objective and getting really curious about how someone sees things and thinks about things and feels. But if you've been playing this pattern out for a while with your partner, they can start to look like competition. They can look like the enemy, the one who's criticizing, blaming, and that is not a good position to be in. So what to do about this? If you're in a relationship with somebody who has the opposite attachment style to you, or they lean opposite to you, how do you work with that? The first thing that I'd want you to do is think about your attachment styles as a spectrum. You have anxious on one side and avoidant on the other. Now, if you are both on extreme ends of the spectrum, you're definitely going to want to get some support, because odds are you're probably reacting more from some traumatic experiences in your life or extreme neglect. That's how people develop extreme attachment styles. Your partner's probably not going to be able to help you with it yet. And I can give you some examples. We were working with a couple once where the guy, and granted, he was also drinking alcohol. So again, I think this comes with other factors usually. But anytime they would fight, he would just take off, literally disappear for hours or even the night. He was so overcome with anxiety and overwhelm from the fights that they were having that he had to physically remove himself and totally disconnect from everyone and everything. And even when he'd come back, he wasn't really regulated. So he'd live in this space of being moderately or extremely stressed. And he would cope with that through alcohol, which again, if you're on extreme sides of the spectrum, you'll usually develop some unhealthy coping strategy. And his wife was on the other end. When they would start to disagree, she'd get extremely loud and aggressive and follow him around the house. And she'd pick up the phone and start calling people, just trying to make a connection with somebody. And obviously this was super unhealthy. They had a couple kids too, young kids, so they were seeing this play out. I think as parents, this is something that you have to remember if you are a parent, that you are going to be molding your children's attachment styles based on what they see you do. But anyways, this couple met with us for a few sessions. They did some individual sessions, and it was fairly obvious that at least one of them was going to need some type of inpatient treatment to deal with their alcoholism and mental health issues. And we normally don't work with couples like this. I'm just trying to give you an extreme example. They needed a higher level of care, but we don't really have much leverage. So they disappeared, and I don't know what happened. We did recommend treatment, and I don't know if they followed up on it. So that's the extreme cases. And I would say the more aggressive cases. On the more passive extreme side, you might have a couple that doesn't really fight that much, but there's just an energy of disconnection. You have the avoidant who's really just focused on themselves. Maybe they work full time, they have a lot of hobbies, they travel, and they neglect the family and the relationship. And the person who's more anxious sees this and in response just kind of does their own thing too. They sweep their needs under the rug as far as the relationship's concerned, and they outsource their needs to other people, friends or family or their children. And so you might not see them fighting, but there's extreme forms of avoidance and anxiety here. They might even struggle to look each other in the eye and have a conversation. And people can do this for a very long time. It always surprises me, especially if there are jobs involved where there's a lot of travel and there are children involved. You can really live separate lives without having much contact with each other for years. And often where this will come to a head and where people will reach out to us is when the kids are getting old enough to start to move out of the house or live their own lives, get their driver's license. And all of a sudden, it's just you two in the house. And it's like, what are we doing? Why are we even married? And do we want to keep doing this? Some people like to call this roommate syndrome. So whereas the more aggressive side of extreme attachment styles will look abusive, the passive side of extreme attachment styles will just be full-on neglect. And there can be nuance here too. Like sometimes you'll have one partner who's been asking the other partner to go to therapy for years, and they've been nice about it, and they keep trying to connect, and their partner keeps blowing it off and traveling and going out of town for work. And they feel okay enough about how things are going, but the pattern just sucks. They don't have the relationship that they really want. And this is a segue into the more subtle stuff, because even if you do have a secure relationship, you have some dynamic that you play out. And you may notice this during transitional periods. So when you've been away from each other and you come back together, maybe after work, one partner wants to go be by themselves, maybe get on their phone or do more work or a hobby or tool around in the garage. And the other partner wants to connect and share about their day, attempt to co-regulate and connect. And maybe they do that a little bit, but there is some push-pull energy there. One person is trying to get out, one person is trying to come in. And it can start to go sideways when maybe a criticism is brought in. And in my experience, this usually comes from the anxious person because they're trying to reach and connect. So they may say something like, hey, whenever you get home, you always go straight to the garage or you get on your phone. And I could really use some help with the kids or making dinner. And the avoidant partner is already overwhelmed. So they're like, you're always criticizing me. You're always telling me what I'm doing wrong. It's never enough. And that escalates into a fight, or they just part ways. And they'll go through this pattern every week or every other week, once a month, whatever. So transitions are one time to watch out for your patterns, and also high value activities for one person. So one of these might be around parenting. So one partner wants to lean in and learn a lot about parenting and be really engaged with the kids. And the other parent's like, yeah, just let them do what they're going to do. They're going to learn as they go. That can cause friction. Money can be another one. One person wants to spend time budgeting and looking at finances. The other one's like, I don't even want to see it. Let's just keep doing what we're doing and hopefully it works out. Sex can be an interesting one because sometimes the avoidant might be the one that wants to have sex more because it's one way that they know how to connect to themselves and their partner. And the anxious person is like, no, I don't want to have sex with you unless I'm feeling connected to you. And that can cause tension. It's an issue of sequencing. Or with extended family, sometimes one partner wants to be really engaged with their family, their parents, their siblings, and the other partner's like, I could take it or leave it. These are usually high value experiences for people. And you've noticed I haven't introduced genders into this, but you've probably already made the connection. that men tend to be more avoidant in my experience and women more anxious. And there are reasons for that. I think conditioning plays a big role. The last thing you want to be is like a needy man, and women get shit for being too independent. So there are those pressures at play. There's also the dynamics of leadership in any given area of your life. Women have a harder time stepping into that and really holding it confidently because they're taught to be submissive to men and to be led by men. And men have a hard time giving up control because it's just the opposite. Men are taught to lead and be in control and be in power and be strong and to not be followers, to always be right. And that makes it really hard to be someone who follows or is led by somebody else. So I know I'm throwing a lot at you. There's a lot to pay attention to and think about here. And what you really want, probably why you clicked on this podcast, is to figure out how to do this better. How do we manage our attachment styles when there's stress or big feelings? One way I like to think about this is the circle of influence. The one person that you have the most control over is you. So if you are feeling stressed or anxious or upset, the most important place to invest is your relationship to yourself, to figure out what's really going on with you, even if your partner isn't willing to do anything. Through the process of developing yourself, understanding yourself more, having more compassion, that will help you be better informed to figure out what you need in the relationship and what you want to do. And there's no magic formula for this. You can be by yourself or you can reach out for support, but the goal is to get centered within you, to feel into your body, to slow down. This is how we start to manage our nervous system. I'm going to be okay no matter what happens. I have options. I have choices. I can trust myself. And you want to have a practice to do this. Some people find meditation and yoga helpful. Some people find exercise to be where they find their spirituality or being outside. It could be having close friends or mentors, a coach or therapist to talk to. I mean, I'd recommend doing all of that if you can. And if your partner's up for it, you can start to get educated together. Listen to a podcast like this together so that you can create a shared language and understanding around your patterns. And if you're more of the avoidant type, like myself, you're going to have to really fight the urge to disconnect, to be kind to yourself, to be kind to your partner, to listen to them, to get curious, to not always go on the defensive or need to be right, to communicate if you do need to take space, exactly how long you're going to be gone and when you're coming back, and to follow through on that. You need to build trust with your partner that you are here with them, and your word and your behavior is what matters. If they've been suggesting that you go get help or that you two get help together, I would get on that now. There's no reason to resist that. It's just going to cause you more problems. And then when you're both doing the work individually and you start to blend it together, you'll notice a shift, you'll notice a change. And then you can start to celebrate the wins. I mean, I see plenty of opportunities where Jenny and I could get into something and fall into disconnection probably every day, but we've learned to manage these much better. And it's not that we do this perfectly. The Gottman's research suggests that even secure couples are misattuned a third of the time, reattuning a third of the time, and attuned a third of the time, meaning like we're in flow with each other. We feel good with each other. And I would say that tracks with Jenny and I's experience. But we just manage that whole spectrum better and better. And learning some present-centered, emotionally focused communication skills will help. And I talk about this in some of my other videos. And you can imagine this for a second. You have your pattern, and let's say you and your partner come together and something starts to flare up. Let's say that your partner asked you to do something and you didn't do it. You forgot about it. Honest mistake. And she brings it up to you. Hey, you said you'd call the kids' school and figure out what they need. You didn't do it. And instead of going into, oh my God, you're always criticizing me. I just got home from work and I have so much on my plate, blah, 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 blah. You were able to take a breath and say, you're right. That's my mistake. I'll do it today. It seems like you're frustrated, and that makes sense. Is there anything else that you're needing from me now? And she gets to say, thanks. That feels really good that you can see that. Thanks for being so open. No, I think that's all I need right now. I know that sometimes you need a few moments to decompress when you get home from work. So makes sense that you're overwhelmed. Go do what you got to do, and let's reconnect here in like 30 minutes. Does that work? And you're like, yeah, thanks. Conversations can go like this. And then when you come back together later on, things are actually good. There's not an elephant in the room. And after you do this 10 times or 100 times, you're like, we fucking got this. We know how to communicate. You can high five each other and you'll notice that your nervous system starts to relax. So it's a combination of understanding what's happening underneath the surface and learning skills to know how to deal with it. Hopefully this makes sense and was helpful. I'm just kind of going off the cuff on this one like I pretty much always do. And Jenny and I are launching a new program at like 90% off. So I will include a link to that in the description. It's not going to be 90% off for long. So I'd suggest getting in there if you're listening to this now and checking it out. You can get real FaceTime with us and access to all our course material for about the cost of one therapy session. It is a smoking good deal. And remember to like, comment, subscribe, share if you like what I have to say, and I'll see you next week.